Welcome to Disability Empowerment Now, Season 4. I'm your host, Keith Murphy Dickinsini, and today I'm talking to dear friends of the show, Nicole, Rebekah, and Jacob. For those of you who don't know them, I'll allow them to introduce who they are.
Hi, I'm Jacob Yandura. It's nice to see you, Keith. I am the composer of How to Dance in Ohio and a longtime writing partner of Rebekah Greer Melocik.
Hi, I'm Rebekah Greer Melocik, and I'm the book writer and lyricist of How to Dance in Ohio, and newer but very devoted collaborator of Nicole D'Angelo.
Hi, I'm Nicole D'Angelo. I'm the assistant music director, script consultant, and access team member of How to Dance in Ohio.
Woo! I think that was the best popcorn ever.
I agree.
In full circle, I think I will stand ground that was the best popcorn.
And I'm a short-time collaborator of Keith.
Oh. 2-minute collaborator.
She doesn't know she's been secretly signed on for multiple collaborations. So, let's talk sequel. I mean, I have really enjoyed doing my first mini series on the musical How to Dance in Ohio. I saw it way more times than I should. I've listened to the soundtrack way more times than I should. I've professionally harassed the cats way more times than I should. I'm a mega fan, and if ever I thought there was a show that would hook me like that, I thought it would be The Phantom of the Opera because of the majestic. Do any of you happen to know Andrew Lloyd Webber? I would love to get him on the show.
I don't know Andrew,
I'm
but
not
also
joking.
I don't know Andrew personally, but Phantom of the Opera was actually the first show I saw at the first big professional Broadway show when I was 9 years old, and that's the show that inspired me to do what I'm doing. And so that show has a very special place in my heart. So I'm glad you like it too.
Yeah, for me, it's Phantom, Les Mis, and Cats. Without seeing those shows probably in reverse order than I just named them, I would not be in love with musical theater such as I am. Now that I've made all the planets align, and so we're all in the same virtual space, wrapping up this series, which I don't really want to wrap up because there's so many other stories to tell and to go. But what would you like creating magic, lightning in a bottle, and seeing it released? Not as long as we all wanted, but on Broadway. Because not everyone gets that opportunity.
Uh,
I'll jump in there. It always felt like there was a lot of goodwill behind the show, and that doesn't mean that there weren't challenges or that like everything went perfectly. Um, but even post Broadway closing, it just feels like the people that like the show and get the show really like it and really get it. And that's how it felt from the inside too. Like you say magic in a bottle, and it did feel magical in the room. And again, not to underplay challenges and conflicts, and like it's hard making theater, but also I always think that like the joy you can hear in the cast album or the joy you felt in the Belasco, that's how it felt for me in the room also.
yeah, I think the joy is the magic to me, and it always has been from day one when, you know, from when we watched the documentary to meeting Alexandra Shiva and to meeting Hal Prince and working with Hal Prince for 2 years, the magic we learned from him of, carrying on legacy and carrying on, the musical theater art form, and then not only to that, but then to hold a huge responsibility to someone like my sister and our different family members that are autistic, to a huge, that then brought into a huge community. There's a huge responsibility. That's the magic to me, and how big the community grew. And I think the coolest part of it was the first preview, where we had, been working on this show for 5 or 6 years. And then, we could keep everything, couldn't let it outside the door. We had to keep everything very secret, and, and then to, be graced by an audience of over 1,000 people and leaping to their feet when the seven ran out on stage. That was like the feeling of lightning in a bottle. So I think just how the community grew and how I felt like the audience was as much part of the show as the company and the cast and the creative team. So that was a very long-winded answer.
Follow that, Nicole.
I think that even the invited dress rehearsal, it was like one of the most magical moments because we had spent all this time in a room crafting. For me, it was largely working with Rebekah on different parts of the script, and we would craft like these things that we would hope would be relatable, or even jokes that we would hope would be funny, and and finally getting to see the audience react the way that we hoped was satisfying, but also it was really profound that some of these concepts that I worried might be foreign to non-disabled audiences really did resonate with them, and that it might have been an audience, a non-disabled audience member's first time hearing about inspiration porn and seeing them have the reaction to it.
That is a real term, by the way.
Yes, that is a real thing. But seeing audience react to that in exactly the way that we hoped, and then some, like just the groans that we heard, and that was the coolest thing ever, was having that collective moment where the disabled people in the audience could be like, now you get it, and the non-disabled people could like, you just could hear the light bulb go off for them that, oh, I never considered that maybe that might be harmful.
Yeah, and I mean, talking about this show with so many of the creative thoughts behind it was exhilarating, and always talking about my ultimate fantasy of just shoving piles of money in your faces to make part 2 and part 3 and a movie. It's like, why don't I have the script as a hardbound book in my office? Why isn't that available on Amazon, Rebekah?
Not
Jacob,
yet, not yet.
make it happen. Now, my birthday is on October 30th. I would
Okay.
like a signed copy from all of you. Actually, no, I would like you, Rebekah, to write the sequel with Nicole. Make it happen.
Wow, that's a pretty quick deadline, Keith.
Oh no, you just have to tell me or lie to me that the process has already begun. But no, I mean, that's where the musical ends. It's beautiful. And I, it's been the one constant I've brought up in every episode of the fantasy. But really, it's not so much a fantasy. There's so many avenues and so many stories you can tell with this group of characters and this cast. Part 2 would not feel forced. Unlike Love Never Dies. I mean,
Annie Warbucks, anyone?
and I love that musical. But again, it's like, why? And it's so we're, I don't know how many months are we all from the Broadway closing. I'm terrible with math. How did you feel going through the exhilaration of creation, seeing your creation on stage, seeing it close, and then, I mean, this is your first, Jacob and Rebekah, Broadway experience. Not everyone gets right out of the gate to Broadway. Just ask Andrew Lloyd Webber.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an incredible experience, and I've really reflected on all of the lessons that I've learned. And I really took some time for myself to, because honestly, the Broadway process feels like lightning in a bottle. It's like you were just thrown into it and you were there to figure it out and problem solve and figure out how to work together. And, you know, much like the show. um, so, I've really have thought long and hard about that whole experience. And going forward, I'm so excited to take everything that I did learn and apply that to other projects and other iterations of this specific show going forward. So, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to do, and we got here and we made an impact, and I think it started a big conversation on Broadway. And to me, the lasting impact is the conversation is still happening, and people are wanting, to learn how we made rooms accessible, how we made the theater accessible. Um, so I feel like, we're forever part of the fabric of the Broadway history, and so I'm very proud and incredibly proud of our team to be willing to make that happen. So, and it just means the world of, people sending me songs, or them singing clips of the songs from the show, like that, because honestly, that's who the show's made for. It's made
Yeah.
for, um, everybody. And so, and to bring their own experiences into, the melodies and the words, that is just the best feeling. Hearing people sing the music is such a cool feeling. So yeah, I'm still reeling in it all, and just very, very excited for the future of it.
You want to go, Nicole? Who's up next?
You can go next.
Okay, I'll go next. Um, when we were out of town in Syracuse, my mom had me write down at the end of every day, like something that I had learned in this professional experience. And I didn't do it every day on Broadway because it was too much, but I did it a lot of days. And the one that always makes me the most emotional is just a note that says everybody showed up. And it was again, this was such a community forward show, and like the team that we had on, like, our side of the table, the three of us, and the cast also. And like every time we added a new part, like when we got into tech and all the designers were there with us, and then like we talked sometimes about like the final piece was the audience, and that we already said like that was so moving when we were like, oh my God, like it doesn't work without them, but I just like, even though it was a short time on Broadway, I felt like I was at the Blasco almost every single night, even after we opened, because people were here from out of town, or people had written to me on Instagram and were like excited. And also it was just really fun to be able to go to a Broadway house and be like, I work here. Like, this is my lanyard. Let me in. And that I don't take for granted. Like, there's been something really nice about how quiet this year has felt in comparison to last year, which was a lot of like, oh, a lot of like big firsts and a lot of learning. But I still, when I think about that experience, it's like, oh, that was so cool how many people just showed up to that theater every night. And then also there's something beautiful about, like that Broadway production has ended, but the journey of the show has really just started, like everyone mentioned, like the show will be licensed and people can, and all the songs are getting released. Like we're in the middle of all the publishing and
Yeah, it really kind of feels like it just began, and the cool thing about it is the Belasco Broadway is one theater, and I honestly can't wait to see it done all over the world, and so yeah, it's awesome. Nicole.
I think
Don't be shy now, Nicole.
no, I needed to give Hope a moment because she was very interested in my headphone cords.
yes.
Um, but I think the biggest takeaway for me was not just having the opportunity to do all these things and having the opportunity to like I live in Jersey, so like I don't have like a home in New York City. So like if I have a 2 o'clock appointment and then the show at 7 and nothing to do in between, usually I'd be like, I don't know what to do with my life, but I could just walk into the Belasco and sit and do a puzzle for 3 hours. Like that was the coolest thing. We did a lot of puzzles. But I think the biggest takeaway for me was having the opportunity to not just do the things, but to be the first to do so many things, that we were the first ones. And until the end of time now, if there's another accessibility team, people are going to say they're the first ones since How to Dance in Ohio, or they're, the next time that there's autistic actors starring in a show, or even disabled actors starring in the show, this is the first time since How to Dance in Ohio. That we are the first, and the prestige that has allowed me has been super cool, because now, where before I would reach out to casting directors or theaters, whenever I see they're posting about whatever show they're doing, Curious Incident or The Glass Menagerie, whatever show they're doing, I would reach out and be like, hey, are you thinking about authentic casting? I would just be like some random person, but now I can be like, hi, I have a drama desk for doing this. Can you please talk to me? And now people will talk to me because that the reputation of the show precedes me, and having the chance to use that to continue the work that I've been doing is really amazing.
Yeah, and it allowed me to meet you, Nicole, in person and to find out that, oh, we already know each other.
Yes.
We just had no idea. And then as I'm trying to set up this episode, two of your friends who were actually the season premiere DM me, Megan, and I'm like, okay, great, because I wanted to connect the series to this season in Jacob's last episode, last season to this, and then I'm still in touch with a few of the cast members who I just adore, by the way. And yeah, it goes on and on and on. Uh, and I have people asking me here, how do we get this show here? How do we play it? Uh, you've got the UK premiere coming up, which will have a whole new creative team behind it. Uh, I mean, the world is your oyster. It's, in a sense, it's, and again, not everyone gets that right out of the gate. And so, how does that feel? That sort of invincible, I can do anything.
Oh my gosh. I have to jump in and just say I'm not, which is not to say that being on Broadway is not an incredible accomplishment and so amazing, but it is hilarious how like it is not necessarily life-changing in all of the ways. Like having the Broadway brand is amazing, but like none of us quit our day jobs. Like we're all still doing the artist
Oh,
not in a bad way. Not in a
yeah,
bad way. Like
no,
like Nicole said, like I think it's given all of us new opportunities, and it's given all of us like a cool authority. Like even though we're still newbies to the Broadway
yeah,
community, like Nicole said, we went through this process that had an extra process on top of it that was really unique. That is something that we get to share with like the larger Broadway community. And I'm sure all of us have like sent access surveys to our like examples of access surveys to our friends to be like, please use them.
yeah,
um, yeah,
Yeah.
but it's also like it's always funny to me how even having major moments in the artist career doesn't change the part of the artist cycle that's like rejection, self-doubt. That part doesn't change at all. What I will say, and it's so funny every time you say right out of the gate, because I've been trying to do this for 17 years before. Like, it took 17 years to get a Broadway show, which honestly, I'm glad it took, or I'm okay with it taking as long as it did because the first experience was so memorable and like so fulfilling, deeply so. And also like, you know, we know ourselves as human beings and artists, you know, because we weren't like 23 when it happened. Not that there's anything wrong with that also, but, but
Yeah.
the patience behind it, I feel really grateful for the experience.
Yeah. And I think the Broadway part of it is just part of the story, right? And I think the thing I'm excited about is I always want to be a student. I don't necessarily, I don't feel invincible whatsoever. I'm very proud and I'm extremely grateful for all of the opportunities that we've had as writers and then as the show has had. And I just think that we have to be continuing to learn, and the UK is going to be such a different experience. And I'm so excited to learn about how theater works over there because it's very different from how it works here.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a huge learning curve, and I can't wait to learn from my collaborators there. I can't wait to learn from the cast um, that's assembled, and the audience is there, So, um, I think at the end of the day, I have to write. I have to write every day, and that's the thing that I love. And Broadway is the ornamentation, is the thing that is nice to get every once in a while. But at the end of the day, what fulfills my heart is what we create. And when Rebekah sends me a piece of a lyric or feedback that, oh, I think we're onto something like that, that's what fuels me. That's what I love.
Yeah, the only fight you two have ever had, and you said this at the reunion, and I'm sure John Lennon and Paul McCartney had more than one fight during their partnership, but you were like, walk it off.
What
And
was our fight? What was our
I
fight?
don't know. You just mentioned that at the reunion concert. That's when I compared you two to the Lennon McCartney of Broadway and compared Rebekah to the female version of feminist Shakespeare because I'm fly like that. But no, it's all what I just said. I said about feeling invincible because I knew you guys didn't feel that, and I wanted you to refute that and be able to talk about the realities of this wasn't the first go around. I mean, it wasn't right out of the gate. It's a long process, and I mean, you guys had earned your bones on what you did before. Talk about more about preparing for the UK launch and what is that like? How do you think the show will change or be adapted? And I mean, usually shows come here from London. They don't, or more than they go from here to London. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking from a fan's point of view. You're professionals. I can never do what you do. Please hire Nicole to write part two and not me. Not me. If you want part two to fail, hire me. If you want it to succeed, hire Nicole. But no, talk about what it is like entrusting your baby, your your child, your vision to another creative team that will be performing with brand new cats across the pond, as they'd say. How will you be consultants? Will you have more of a hands-on role, or what is that all like?
Yeah, I think we're not things are still being ironed out, so I don't think we're allowed to talk
I
about too
know
much.
that. I know that.
But what I will say, yes, Rebecca and I,
I mean, I don't
will
know that, but it's
will
just
be
like leading you to where I want you to.
I caught the hook. Um,
Yes.
but I mean, Rebecca and I, yeah, we'll definitely be involved. And I think for me personally, I'm excited to work on the couple of things that were on our list for Broadway previews, but we just didn't get to it. Or I mean, with Broadway, it's a ticking clock. You're racing against the ticking
Yeah.
clock, and you only have a certain amount of hours to rehearse in a day. And everybody wants to work on something and change, and team lighting wants something, team sound, team, choreo. And so to get everybody's needs and wants done in a very short amount of hours in a day is a very difficult thing. So, we have, a list that we of
Yeah.
small change, and they're small,
Yeah.
and so we're really excited to
But
have
still
the opportunity to work on that.
top secret. Like
Top secret.
Disney level top secret. I mean Marvel level top secret.
They keep it so top secret. We don't even know all the answers. But also, we will have the same creative team in England too. So
Oh,
it's a new cast, but it's the same. It's the Broadway production moving over there. So what's cool, what we don't know fully is like how big the space will be, and like Jacob said, like we have our short list. I have Nicole's longer list of things for me to say.
Nicole having a longer list. That's shocking. That's. I need to go lay down.
It does not exist. A short list does not exist.
No, but all the questions are really good. They're really good questions. Nicole said, would you send them like on closing day, and you were like, for when you're ready?
Yeah, I was like, do not open until later.
Yeah. I can totally imagine Nicole typing that. So let's debrief on Broadway because it was such a significant show, but at the end of the day, it was only a show. A idea of a show that became a show. I know you had to cut a few songs. Why, Jacob? Why did you cut any of your beautiful, beautiful, heavenly music from that show? But
Thank you.
besides that, were there any things that you wanted to include in part one, or just keep referring to it as part one? Because I'm going to reach hard enough to make you all welcome part two. It's and that's not a joke. It's gonna be what I keep bringing up. Cause I'm that persistent. But is there anything you wanted to include? But the time constraints for this or that, you just couldn't. Like, I keep mentioning the subtle moment between Ashley and Mel in Act 1, where you get the pre-show friendship, and it's really quick, but months later, it's still stuck in my mind. Were there any moments like that ended up just being caught because of one reason or another?
Yeah.
Or they top secret to Jacob? I can't tell. I don't know.
You know, I think what we can say is there are moments like that, that I think Rebekah and I might explore putting back in. These are conversations that we haven't
Oh,
necessarily had yet with the broader team. So I just want to be careful on what we talk about.
okay.
But I will say the cutting process is hard, and of course, and especially
It's kill your angels for a reason.
yeah, and you have to, have a conversation with yourself where you're like, especially with my score, every note is intentional, and every phrase is intentional. And I know Nicole will see things, and they will be like, "Did you mean that?" And I was like, oh yeah, I did." Of course I did. But so when things like that have to be cut, of course it breaks your heart, but you have to look at it and say the piece is greater than me. I have to serve the piece. I have to serve. This is what the audience is responding to. I think for us, it's safe to say that a lot of the Amigo and Ashley material was cut. During workshops, it was really funny.
Really? Wow.
Oh yeah. During the workshops and Syracuse, the constant note was, we want more Amigo, we want more Ashley, we want more exploration, we want more Y. And then we put it in there. And then once we got to Broadway, it was, we want less Amigo, we want less Ashley, and part of, I mean, I can be cheeky for a minute. Part of me and Rebekah were like, we told you so. but we'll humor you and write it. People wanted the 7. And so
Yeah.
And that was the goal, right? So if that means cutting a song, which we did, we cut Life Interrupts. It's one of my favorite songs we've ever written, but
And it does interrupt. Life does interrupt a lot.
Mm-hmm. And yes, it's Ashley's song, but it applies to everybody on that stage, so it's a tricky conversation, but I think the broader thing is you have to think about audience's attention span, and you have to think about the flow of the show. And I think where that song came in was a lull in the act where the audience was ready to finish the act. You keep some, you lose some. But yeah, I'm excited to dive in. I've had like enough of a break to let everything digest and then get back at it.
What about you, Rebekah?
Yeah, I had my list of like a handful of things I wanted to do that we ran out of time before we froze the show. And I'm organized in my own way. So like by closing, I had the draft of the script that had like, okay, these are all the things that I learned watching it on stage with audiences for 2.5, 3 months. And then I would do, and then I have a separate version that Jacob has seen that's like, what if I went totally crazy and I could make any of the changes I wanted? And that one's a little more intense.
Which I do love some of them.
Some of it's pretty fun.
Woo!
Nicole, we'll send you a copy.
Yes, please.
But it's tricky because my dad's an engineer and he loves using this like engineering phrase for us in musicals where he's like, at some point you just gotta kick the engineer out of the room and put the product on the market.
Yeah.
So I feel like I would never stop making little changes.
You do, and like that's Broadway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that's Broadway,
If
where
you're not
you have to
done,
like
they're
you
just
have to
telling
stop.
you.
You just boom, you gotta go.
We're gonna
Once
get pencils down.
previews are done, the show's rocked.
Yeah. You know, it's funny too because like if we could have 6 weeks of previews and like all that time to like try one thing, it's funny how cutting, 30 seconds in one section can feel like cutting 3 minutes. Like the flow of the show, like Jacob was saying, really is interesting. I, Again, I hope we have time enough to do some of the bigger changes. But top
Well,
secret.
it's yeah, and it's fun to like, dissect both acts, right? Because we also have to remember this is an ensemble show. And
Yeah.
you have to, I mean, for us, it was very important that you cared about each person. And I think you do. But the act one is very much a slow burn in terms of setting everybody up. And then act two is the roller coaster, and so you can definitely feel, it's just how it, this specific show doesn't operate like a normal narrative of The Music Man, or where you clearly have your protagonist and you have your love interest, and you just follow those characters pretty much. We're following many people. So finding balance and finding making sure you care about everyone. That was always my biggest sort of question and concern.
And I can say that something I'm excited for in the UK that we didn't have so much access to here because we were too busy breaking too much ground, is the UK is far ahead of the US in terms of disability on stage. They recently had the Little Big Things. They've had some really great disability theater, and so we're not tasked with making all these things happen for the first time. So some of the things that logistically would have been not impossible, but like just when you're doling out your resources, it would have been really difficult to make certain things happen. There might be a better chance of making them happen in the UK. Like with casting, my dream always was to see a non-speaking actor on stage, or to see an actor with an intellectual disability on stage, to be able to explore other sides of autism that some of the critiques that we got were, this doesn't represent my child, and they all have high support needs. Not true, but saying there's a certain kind of autistic. I think it was really easy for people to just like pin that on us without realizing the logistics that would go into the breaking of the ground of including people who've never had the opportunity to be included before on Broadway. And so I'm hoping, because the UK is further ahead, maybe now we'll have the opportunity to see some of those things play out.
Yeah. Just to add one more thing, Keith, something that I was surprised by was after we made the cast album, and I started studying a lot of other people's cast albums, and then I would listen to our cast album, and just in terms of edits, Jacob and I had to decide like what dialogue would be included in the cast album and what wouldn't. And it's interesting to me to see what narratives are clear even without the dialogue. I don't know if either of you had that experience too, of like, oh, I don't know if we like needed any dialogue in this part of the song. Was that just me?
I think so.
And that's collaboration.
That's collaboration. Yeah, I mean, you need some context. But Keith, that was the hardest thing. Honestly, the cast album was so hard. And because again, they don't tell you how it's done. No one tells you. All they tell you is you have 60 minutes, and that is all you're allowed to do. And it's all based on how much money there is, how much money they
Yeah.
want to put into it. So, it could go longer, but I mean, making cuts in the show was actually easier than making cuts on the cast album because, you had to make it feel like there isn't a cut in the music but you want to include, so many things. That was so tricky, but I'm really proud of what we did in a short amount of time. While we were in previews and putting up the show, while we were figuring out the parade, it was a tricky time. And they're all different hats, they're all different. None of them work together. So, but I think the best piece of advice that Mary Mitchell Campbell said to me in creating the cast album is, she said, create an album, don't create a show. And because you think of it as you're going on a road trip and you want to, you have to get to certain things. And so that's hard because, the purist in me and the music theater nerd and I'm like, but I want the listener to hear how this motive is playing under this and to document this. And it's, it's everything, so that kills my soul a little bit, but you have to get to the crux of the song. So
I wanted that too. He's not
I
alone.
know. Yeah,
It's just
and
me,
and
and
I'm
I'm like,
sure,
cut it all.
but I mean, I think a cast album listener is very different from
Yeah.
a different listener. They're analyzing every motive and every piece of instrumentation so of course I wanted to create the whole, have record the whole score, but I had to do what was given in front of me. So
If you had the chance to revisit these characters, would you? I mean, you mentioned, Jacob, that you write every day. And yeah, you co-wrote this amazing show. They were new characters. They're now not new characters. We're all writers, and there's this appeal, this law to always creating a new thing, always improving. But these characters, and particularly where you all leave them at the end of the musical, like a sequel would not at all be hard to write creatively, just to put them in other situations that were relatable, but they're not new characters. Do you feel the pull between, I want to create something new, something totally original, instead of looking back because you've sort of not sort of, you did musicalize the documentary, and now a sequel, you can write a totally original story with already established characters, but they're not new. And so, which if you had the opportunity, would you go back? Or would you go to something new? And I'm asking everyone, because as a writer, I always find myself at that crossroads in my work. And so, what is it like with this particular musical and characters?
I mean, I think there's a lot to mine in these characters too. If we're casting dreams out into the world, I think someone should make it a TV show. I think you're right. Like, let's make it serialized. But personally, I don't need to write any other version of the show. I think like there are plenty of writers who could take these characters and do wonderful things with them. They
Nicole,
should definitely make
now's your
Nicole.
chance.
Yeah. Well, no, Nicole and Jacob and I should definitely be executive producers and consultants on the TV show. But um, I've been really excited all year to be working with new characters, to have like new things boiling, and a couple of like old things that were
Yeah,
totally back burner that now get to be
Same.
on the front burner, and you know, like different
Yeah.
themes, different worlds, you know, it keeps it fresh.
Same. I think what's cool, like going into the UK and going into licensing, I think there are going to be different interpretations, and because it's going to be a whole new cast. However, everything is set, the vocal ranges are set, so much of that was in flux throughout the last 3 years because I tailored everything to that specific person, right? So I think the people cast in these roles are definitely it's set, so I think I'm excited to see different interpretations without the writing changing. Actually, I think that's going to be really cool. But like what Rebekah said, I'm super excited for a new beginning, and I think ultimately that's what is so beautiful about the end of the show, is that all seven
it
of them
is a
and
new
everyone,
beginning.
it's a new, they're all starting anew,
Yeah,
and I think that's the whole point of the show, and this connection that they made with each other and how much they've grown and how much they've learned about themselves, whether in the workforce or in a relationship or standing up, to people and teaching someone about inspiration porn, or, they're
which
changed.
again is a real thing, folks. We did not create that term just to be cutesy and risque.
That would have been Stella Young.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, Stella Young. What about you, Nicole? Would you have any gumption to try and get Rebekah back into this ward? Because once again, if you get one, you can sweet talk Jacob. Although the next time, Jacob, you leave during the summer, please take me. Just shove me in a suitcase and just adopt me. No one will care but my dog. Trust me on that. But no, no. Would you want to step in to the writing role and really explore or create another group of characters that would somehow related to this group? Because how's Prince granddaughter, and I mean, you don't have to stick with this group, but would you, is there that creative itch of it's my turn now?
No. Something I don't think I've ever told Jacob or Rebecca, but something I would love to see is we've seen with shows such as Dear Evan Hansen and The Prom, these young adult companion novels. And I think that something like that would be cool just to flesh out, because we do have, so much time to explore these seven characters, and particularly Mel and Remy are two characters I would love to see fleshed out. And I'm just speaking it into the universe, but that's the only iteration probably, or a TV show that I'd want to take these characters on. But that's also just coming from me being somebody who would much rather meddle with other people's work than create my own.
That's awesome. That's a really cool idea.
It is a
That's
good
a really
idea,
cool
Nicole.
idea.
So, any final for now, and I always say for now, because it's a standing invitation on who comes on this show. I've asked certain cast members to come back anytime because I love people. Any final, for now, thoughts on what you three, with a lot of help, have created, and what's next for you three, the old stars of disability advocacy through Broadway theater?
Well, Jacob and I are working on a new show that is a ghost story about gentrification, I'll say. But it's funny because even just in the early stages, and I'm putting this recorded for life to be held to this, I just keep thinking about how much I already miss Nicole because they're like, I love researching, but Nicole's a better researcher than I.
I'm really glad you put that out into the universe
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
all, because I said in the season premiere, talking to Nicole's friends in trying to solve the inaccessibility of Broadway theater, that we would probably need gazillions of Nicoles, and they all just
Well,
smirked up. And so I totally agree with you, Rebecca, on you mentioning Nicole. But
I do.
go.
Oh, same. I
You
mean,
do.
like how we've, I think every good collaborator has found their shorthand with each other, and we've really found that with Nicole in the last couple of years, and so, I think it's exciting to end one project and move on to another one, and who knows where that will take us,
Well, and it's like,
That's our secret coffee tomorrow,
yeah.
Rebecca.
Oh my God. Okay.
To be honest, though, my computer is about to die. I am so sorry. I do have to go.
That's
I didn't want to end in the middle of a sentence or
No.
think I just stormed off and angrily.
Yeah, no,
Typical Jacob.
somehow
Starting
tracked
off
you
angry.
down,
Yeah.
Jacob.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Keith, and it's thank you for being such a beautiful leader of the community and a beautiful fan, and
You
thank you
check
for loving
it's
the
in the
show.
mail, Jacob. You check it's in the. But no, Nicole,
Hilarious.
thank you, Jacob. Any
You're
final
welcome.
thoughts, Nicole, on. Yeah.
I'm gonna sign off. Okay, bye guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
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 So.
I never want to work with either of them ever again.
Bummer. Oh my gosh.
So, any final thoughts on what both of you have learned or would advise other up-and-coming creators who want to get into working in theater just in general?
Yeah. Yeah. I have like a really easy answer for this that I always say, which is that I really believe that like in the arts and showbiz, which are not always the same thing, it does take
Certainly.
yeah, some talent, majority tenacity, and then timing, which is my word for luck, which is like you could be the most talented person working in New York City or not working in New York City and like never have your opportunity. So much of it is just magic fairy dust, um, and luck. But the tenacity I would say is 80%. Like you just have to outlast everybody else and just keep doing it.
What about you, Nicole?
I think that just always remembering that there's no one path and that it's never linear when it comes to this field. Those are two great things to remember, and I wish it was as easy as just saying create and everything will happen. But I think that this show in particular is good evidence to me that if something is meant for you, it will find its way to you, because my origins with the show were auditioning and then missing my callback and then being like, well, that's it forever, and getting a call months and months later. And obviously being involved up to Broadway, like it's just proof that sometimes when a project's meant for you, no matter what you do, it will find its way.
And so last question that I always end every episode on, and thank you so much for coming back. The planets aligned. Hopefully that will be the same for the dinner where I'm gonna make you all sit with me at the table. I like to you think I'm joking, I'm not. I like to think that both advocates with disabilities and those who have yet to discover or embrace their own disabilities listen and watch this program. But I'm not naive enough to think that each group and groups within those groups take the same things away from every episode. So what do you hope that advocates with disabilities take away from the amazing journey that How to Dance in Ohio has had on Broadway and will in the future in the UK and hopefully all over the country, if not all over the world? And what do you hope that How to Dance in Ohio continues to teach people who have yet to discover or embrace their own disabilities? No pressure, none at all.
Well, I think something that's exciting for me about the work that we did, and something that's important to remember, is that like we haven't yet seen the impact of Ohio on Broadway. That's yet to come. Not because people aren't taking our cues, but because the shows that we're seeing now were already in development. We're already in motion. So I'm excited to see in future Broadway seasons the impact that has had. And so that's what I would say to advocates is you never know when work that you've done is going to have an impact, and just trust that everything you do has an impact. And for people who haven't discovered their disability or embraced their disability yet, the happiest saying is unless you die young, you too will be disabled. Why not break down barriers and stigma?
Wow, that's the happy thing.
That's the happy one.
Don't worry, disability's coming for you too.
Damn, Nicole, this isn't an active talk. So, Rebekah, follow that.
First of all, I love that. And yeah,
I
I think
do
one
too, Nicole.
I think something Nicole and I tried to do was create multiple access points in the show for for people who would be bringing their own like experiences or feelings about disability that were going to be really, really like a really wide range, you know. And I can even say my experience working on the show when I started it and felt like, oh my gosh, I don't know anything about this. And then I would say at some point when Nicole and I were deep in it and I had learned so much, I realized, wow, I really don't know anything about this. But I still have so much more to learn. But it was so nice to have Nicole, who I would say was like much further along the journey of disability advocacy, to like quite often hold my hand, sometimes literally hold my hand.
I can imagine that.
And again, like sometimes successfully, not always successfully, but I do think that again, that like what do I hope people take away from the show? I hope that what they take away reflects that wide range of um, experiences that we knew would be coming to it. Like, you know, we wanted to make sure that the storyline about the reporter and the inspiration point, that we knew that we kind of had to create a primer within the show
Yeah.
itself of how to view the show. And
Yeah.
honestly, like that was narratively tricky, but important, I think. And some people would see that and be like, I've known about this for years. Okay, fine. And some people saw it and were like, wow, I've never heard of this
Yeah.
before. I'm so happy to know that this exists. And some people saw it and like didn't understand it and left the show and were like, that was so inspiring.
They
So
sure were.
Yeah.
that's what I mean by like sometimes successfully, sometimes not successfully. And that's just like one version of that. But I hope that we gave people enough to grab on no matter what part of their journey they're on, whether they're disabled themselves or whether they love someone disabled or whether they just walked in not knowing anything and had an open heart to learn.
Yeah. I mean, I will always push for part two and a movie because Rent, 10 years after it closed, they somehow got almost all the cast back for a movie production. And so, never say never, but these characters, I can't imagine how often they were in your heads and that they're always in mind because I'm always curious as to where are they now. You're just at the beginning of Meredith and
Drew.
Drew. Thank you. Relationship. Do they go the distance or do they flame out? I mean,
They flame
that's
out. We all know it. Come on.
wow. I I want to have another episode slash therapy section. Will you unpack that for me? But I just cannot properly articulate my infinite respect for both of you and Jacob for the work that you have done and continue to do as a fan, as a professional, as an advocate. Thank you all for changing my life and for how I look and view musical theater and what's possible for people with disabilities. You're always welcome on this program. And I'll see you at dinner in December, and that's final. Thank you so much, Nicole, Rebekah, and Jacob. Truly, you made more of a mark. And we didn't even talk about Jacob's Instagram and how I would find posts where people would tag and they would say, I just saw How to Dance in Ohio for the 25th, 26th, 27th time. And I'm like, and I thought I was obsessed with musical theater. That's incredible. And I could talk to you guys forever. Until next time, my friends, have a wonderful week.
Thank you, Keith.
So nice to be on.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.